To understand people helps us to connect with people, and then we can build relationships, and from those relationships come our influence. So in business and in my family, I think those are really important things. I have 4 children. My husband and I have 4 children. We've been married almost 30 years. And our children, I've got 2 millennials and I've got 2 Gen Z children. Connecting with people and having influence is really important to me. We have to expand our views of how people work and where they come from so that we can build that relationship and trust. And when we have that, we get peace and influence. Sometimes our conflict is about priorities and both sides can be right. Sometimes it's not about character. It may be a collision of styles and values. And so thinking about that, our conflict with styles and values, a lot of times that comes to generational things. So what makes a generation? Well, 3 things that I want you to remember. It's parents, politics, and pop culture. Those are our 3 things that make up how we work. Now I know those are generalities and we're all different people, and maybe some of us were one generation raised by a grandma or something, so we've got some different influences. But the politics and the pop culture going on around us pretty much stay the same for whatever generation we're in, right? Our parents can differ. Those things are not going to differ as much. And I don't want to stereotype people or try to pigeonhole people. It's just to give us this overall understanding of generational shifts, and that how sometimes these things that seem really sudden, like where did that come from? Well, it's really been decades in the making, because we have these generational shifts that happen. To me, I look at it like if there's a stream coming down a mountain. So this stream is coming down the mountain, and over time, the weather and things that happen, the rocks shift. As the rocks shift, the stream moves. And so I look at it like that. So it's parents, politics, and pop culture. Yes, we're all unique. I'm not saying we're all the same. Some of these things I might talk about, you might say, oh my goodness, yes, I identify with that. And other things you may not identify with at all. And that's okay, because you're an individual. This is just a generality to understand. So what are those things? Parenting styles, world events, educational shifts, financial climate, faith, global exposure, all those things contribute to how we think, what we value, how we communicate. Just even the development of technology over the decades changes a lot of all of those things. How we think, how we communicate, how we get our information, how we put our information to work, what we value, what we see happening, all those things work with it. So the builders would be born between 1925 and 1945. The boomers, that's my parents, 1946 to 1964. Then Generation X, that's what I'm part of, is 1965 to 1979. The millennials are 1980 to 1996. Generation Z is 1997, and they're kind of still determining the cutoff point. Some say 2012. Others will say 2010 is the cutoff point for that. And then Generation Alpha is our 2010 to 12 and underneath that. So those are the generations that we're thinking about, and that's a lot of different people, and that's a lot of different ages. So a few things that we will discuss about a builder. I like to have an I am statement. That makes it easier for me to kind of associate. So for my builders, it's I am as good as my word, a handshake. I'm a saver. Work is a privilege. I work to survive. Like, you got to think this is back in the World Wars, Great Depression, or slightly after era. So you're looking at people where work was a privilege and they were working to survive. They wanted a better life for their children. They were building society to sustain the future for their children. So they didn't go to every baseball game. They didn't hit all their activities. And it wasn't because they didn't care. It was because they cared, but they felt the ramifications of work not being a certainty. So now it was, I'm working to establish their future. So what are our communication tips? We're going to cut straight to that. Our communication tips: one-on-one, make eye contact, which is really tough right now, especially if they're in nursing care facilities and things like that. How do we do that? I've seen some inventive people. Zoom, this is great. Get on calls with people and things. That can be really tough. I remember my grandma, end of her life, she was picking up the remote control thinking it was the phone. So this is a tough place for them to be. So I've seen a lot of people taking those steps to go to the window, get to the window, get to the door so you can talk to them through the window, things like that. Sometimes it's the best we can do. It's really sad that they're in this place right now where we're not able to connect the way that we would have before. But ask questions and listen closely to them. They definitely prefer more formal communication, traditional protocols, all that kind of thing. They value expertise and experience and respect those who follow suit. So I think that's important as we're navigating these really crazy times with COVID and all this kind of stuff. understand that they are going to take most of their cues from the news, no matter if we agree with that or not, because those were the trusted people in their days, and that's who they have contact with still right now. So that's where they're at. Proof points are important. You need to prove that there is a need for something new. So that need for I can't see you, they have to have the proof points for that. And a lot of times that comes through the news and some of the different things that are going on. You can draw your own conclusions from that. And they hold privacy in high esteem. Discretion is really important. They like to have their information protected, or at least they perceive that it's protected. So that's why they can get really crazy about, their things at the end of their life and their bank accounts in there, because that privacy is super important to them. So respect that. So that's our builders. Our baby boomers are 1946 to 1964, and their I am statement is, I am what I do, I live to work. That's their work preference. So we've got the builders work to survive, the boomers live to work. So it's our work shift. The 80s, a lot of them came professional things in the 80s. It was the me decade. And the me decade was when we changed from we the people to me the person. So that's a huge shift in the United States for how we think and how we do things. Before that, it was always about what was good for the greater good, all those military, drives to save things and donate things and all those things. Then it became me the person. So this individualism that shifted. And then we have to think about, now that we're in this thing of social distancing and listening to the government, and some of our individual things are being a little more challenged, how is this going to affect how we approach things? It could be really different. So here's our communication tips. We want to make sure that they feel respected and appreciated. So that's really important to that generation, because that's how they understand that they're valued. So body language is important. Put down your device and look them in the eye, which I think is hilarious, because my parents don't always do that, but they appreciate when I do. They prefer face-to-face conversations, to be shown how to do things, to speak in an open and direct style, and to avoid controlling language. So they don't want to be trapped into something. So, sometimes that selling thing where it's like, well, if I want to convince them, then I'll, you say yes 3 times and you can't say no, it doesn't work so well. They get a little irritated with that. They like to see flexibility in our thinking and want details to show that we've thought it through. So don't just give one solution, present 3 solutions and the reason why for all of them. That really helps. Use emotional images that play to their sense of family, whatever their values are. And remember, they're spending a lot of time on the internet right now. So if you want to reach them, that's a good place to do it. And yes, it's usually going to be something like Facebook, but wherever they're at is where we need to find them. So Generation X, we're the adapters. That's me. I am all things to all people. That's my I am statement. I'm all things to all people, or I like to go back to the I'm every woman, right? So that's where we're coming from. We're into work-life balance. So our work shifted again to work-life balance now from I live to work. Communication tips. One thing with Generation X is do not overlook them. So much has been focused on the parents before them and now the demographic after them, the millennials, that they feel like they've been forgotten. So just remember that they're there. Share information on a regular basis. This group loves information, so try to keep them in the loop. Give them regular feedback. They're going to use that to adapt to new situations, and they like the email. So communication tips for Generation X, basically they want to be upfront, they want to be included, they don't want to be forgotten. Millennials, that's I am my recognition. These are working to live. So my I am statement, I'm my recognition, notice me, and I am working to live. So you can see where that conflict can come. We've got boomers who live to work, and now with one generation separated, we've come to work to live. So it's a whole different thing. So here's our things. With millennials, they like small goals with tight deadlines, so keep that in mind. You want to be confident with them, allow them to challenge ideas. That's what being confident is. It's not overrunning them. It's allow them to give ideas, express the desire to listen. This is a real important one. Acknowledge their experience before you reference your own. Hear them out first. If they can get out what's on their brain, then they're going to be easier to listen to you. So let them get theirs out first. Don't talk down to them. Okay? They like action words and they like to be challenged, but they don't like to be talked down to. Give and ask for lots of feedback. Ask them what they think. Give them positive feedback. So when I say give feedback, give way more positive than critical. Okay? You want to give them something to lift them up. Ask for lots of feedback. Listen to what they have to say. Communicate clearly and specifically. So give your details on the front end, not after they didn't do what you wanted. They like informal communication. We should embrace roles like mentoring, counseling, advocating, sponsoring, any of those things. They're looking for someone to be their Yoda. Okay, so if you're familiar with Star Wars, which I'm a big Star Wars geek, but they want someone to be their mentor, not to be the hero of the story. They want to be the hero of the story. So if you can be the Yoda, if you can walk in enough humility that you can allow that to happen, and you can sow into them and let them be the hero of the story, you're going to have much better results. Be willing to adapt. This is another important thing. You have to understand, so I've explained really quickly, I know, but parents, politics, pop culture makes a huge difference in how we see things. So with that in mind, you're going to figure out pretty quickly that a millennial or a Gen Z is going to have a different frame of reference than what you have. So it's really important to suspend the bias of your own experience to try to see things through their lens. It's called empathy. But that's what we need to do. It's not ascribing to what they're saying. It's not saying we believe exactly the same thing. I'm on the same page as you, but just suspending long enough to really understand where they're at. If you can do that and you can let them get their piece out first, then you're gonna have a lot more success having influence with whatever you have to add. Generation Z, my I am statement for them is I am my likes, and which is different than recognition, because likes are, whatever happens on Instagram, or mainly Instagram and Snapchat. So when those things happen right now, the likes release dopamine in their brain. So they're looking for that dopamine fill, that fix. So we might get it from cigarettes or alcohol or chocolate if you're me. And so caffeine, all those things. And so with kids though, it's their likes. And so that puts them very dependent on social media right now when they need a feel good fix. Yeah. But actually the more time they spend there, the more tired they get, the more overwhelmed they become. And all the things that happen there, they actually become less resilient to what's going on around them. So it's important to help them set healthy boundaries, to get them to communicate, to ask them real questions, and to communicate back to them in a real way, like with facts. Yeah. They want to hear the facts. They don't want to hear the hype. That makes them scared. It's like what I talked about, that leading from wisdom rather than fear, is that difference between telling a kid, hey, don't go out in the street or you're going to get hit by a car. Or saying, okay, make sure you look both ways to make sure there's no cars coming. So we need to take that second approach where we're putting water on the fire, not gas on the fire. So it's like, yes, we're going to be wise. We're staying in to be wise. Even if you got the virus, I think you would be okay. But we're going to stay in to be wise and to respect the authority of the people around us, like the medical authorities and the government authorities that are trying to contain and find a cure so that we can get caught up. So speaking those facts to keep them calm is really good. Other things that we can do to help them is just to connect with them at home, to help them by making them a part of solutions in our home. So that may be with meals, grocery lists, cleaning things, projects in the home, anything we can do, crafts, anything we can do to make them a part of what an activity is. So it's not the activity it's just them having the idea. What would you like to do? Or if they don't have an idea, how can I help you be creative and ingenuous? And so how can I help them with that? To write down hopes and dreams. That's a big thing, because right now we kind of quit hoping and dreaming. So then it's a bucket list, family things we want to do when this is over, whatever those things are, things that we can anticipate. Reminisce together. My kids love to look at old pictures, family videos, talk about fun things we've done, fun times we've had, something to lighten that mood. Any way we can laugh, funny movies, shows. I mean, I've been watching old Saturday Night Live YouTube videos with my daughter because she didn't even know Jimmy Fallon was on Saturday Night Live, So it's like we've been watching things just to kind of lighten those moods and have fun together. I mean, we'll have crazy dance night. We were all trying to do the Napoleon Dynamite dance last night in my living room, and it was hilarious because my husband is not a good dancer, but we were having a lot of fun with it. So things that can lighten the mood is really good. Make sure that you're eating meals together, create discussion topics, use cards, talk about what's one hope you have. I mean, whatever those are, there's lots of those things available online, but anything that's going to help them to connect in that way. So there are a couple things that really apply to every generation. One is look for and call out the greatness in each other. When we do that, we really help people to be the best they can be. And when they feel like our heart is for them, it doesn't now, a millennial needs that, but a boomer still loves that. Yeah. So if we can look for and call out the greatness in each other and help lift each other up, that's number one. Number two is to be empathetic. If we can suspend the bias of our own experience and really listen to somebody else without having to judge it, without having to jump in and change their mind, without getting afraid because their views conflict with ours and we're afraid of what the world might become if we let them talk. If we can do that, we can bring that respect, because respect is really important. So we've got empathy, respect. Those are two things. Those are both really important, to respect each other's viewpoints. And then the way that we can include people is to identify things that we have in common. What do we all see the same way? That's why, Gail, I know one of the things that you do is you work with roundtables and values and that kind of thing too. And when we are able to assemble around a common value, we figure out what we have in common instead of what we don't have different. Like, why do we all think honesty is important? Well, it all affects all of us positively. Why is respect good? Well, we all want to be respected. You know, why is it important to be responsible? Well, we all enjoy when the people around us are responsible. So those are the things that we can connect on and agree on. And when we start to agree on those things, a couple things happen. One, we start to see people as real people and not cartoons. Like you talked about, Kristen, that, you know, the generations, why they throw sand and okay boomer and, you know, that kind of stuff. Right. Well, we need to see them as real people and not just the cartoon people. And so in order to do, it's so much easier to get on our soapbox with a cartoon person, right? It's so much easier to throw sand at people when they are not real, when they don't have real feelings, when they're just, you know, stupid or whatever we want to say. So if we can help to see people as they really are, and the one way to do that is to connect an environment where we're talking about something that's not explosive, where people can express themselves, and where we can hear and listen, really important, value opinions, and allow them to come up with revelation and a step for growth. So that's why a roundtable works so great for that stuff to happen. I know you've got information on those, but that's really helpful too. But I think those are the most important things: empathy, respect, you know, listening, suspending the bias, having our heart before somebody else. I mean, those are things when we put other people before ourselves, and when we can really respect them and want to see the best happen for them, when our heart's for them, then everybody's allowed to shine. And I think that's the best way to do it.